we need to up our food production to be able to meet up with the demand that will be upon us, which is why under this ministry, considering the departments we have, the agencies we have been saddled with the responsibility to ensure that in terms of food sufficiency levels for Lagos State, we up the numbers. Like the PRO had rightly mentioned, these agencies, these departments, starting with the Fisheries Department, the Vets Department, the Forestry Department, Agri-Services Department, the Agribusiness Department, and then you have the likes of the agencies, LASCODA, which is the Coconut Development Authority, AHA, that is Agric Lands Holding Authority, ADA, which is the Agric Development Authority, and then you have the LISA, which is the Lagos Agricultural Input Supply Authority. They've been saddled with the responsibility to ensure that all we do is tenable. We also have the multilateral agencies' collaborations with the World Bank, which is where we have the appeals program and we have the FADAMA additional financing 2 program as well. And we have the other departments that are supportive, particularly planning, research, and statistics. You have the procurement department, obviously, and you have the accounts, financing, HR department also fully in support of all that we do as a ministry. If you consider our strategic objectives as a ministry, it is number 1 to ensure wholesome foods come into Lagos or are produced in Lagos. Is to ensure that we are upping our food production numbers. Is to ensure that in terms of IGR, at least we're able to harness the possibilities and the profitability around what agriculture is in Lagos, and also to eliminate or reduce post-harvest losses. These objectives sit on 6 pillars. And these 6 pillars, obviously, will start with policy formulation. It will talk about market accessibility. It will talk about value chains of focus where we have the advantages. It will talk of financing and funding. It will talk about the use of technology. It will talk about infrastructural development for the agricultural sector. So looking at what these 6 pillars portend, what we have been able to deliver in the last 2 years are easy for anybody to see. For training, capacity, and empowerment, training, capacity building, and empowerment in the ministry, we've been able to train well over 12,574 youth and women. We've been able to empower 19,207 youth and women. We've been able to give food palliatives to well over 600,000 families in Lagos with an average family of 6, meaning 3.6 million people. We've been able to increase our revenue in Q1 of 2021 by 127%. We've been able to link the fishermen in this state, 5,792 of them, to CBN intervention funds, as well as 500 cassava farmers. We've been able to shut down 18 illegal slaughter slabs. We've been able to commission 1 semi-mechanized abattoir. We've been able to acquire 1,135 hectares of land, and also, we have been able to provide extension services to 882 hectares of farmland in Lagos. Also, we've been able to provide 3,900 metric tons of feed palliatives, maize and sorghum to our farmers, especially as they were hit during the pandemic. What this also means is, looking at the 6 pillars that I had mentioned earlier, starting with policy formulation and the implementation of it. We recently launched the 5-year agricultural roadmap. And the idea around the roadmap was essentially, where are we as a state? We say we're at about 18 to 20% food sufficiency levels. We would like to get to 40%, 50% within the next 5 years. What would be the framework around us delivering this agenda? What would we need to do across the different value chains where we feel that we have the advantages? That is essentially what the roadmap is supposed to do for us. And at the same time, show the way for the public and the private sector partnerships that we envision that would drive this policy formulation, which is why we feel that in stimulating private sector investment, we should be able to at least give them some point of comfort for them to understand that Lagos State, under the administration of Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has a focus and has a people-inclusive agenda towards ensuring that the private sector is fully involved in this partnership. Some of the initiatives that we are looking at, and we have already kick-started the process, is the Lagos Aquaculture Center for Excellence project. We are also looking at the Eco Coconut Processing Facility in Badagry and a host of other projects. The idea around all of this also especially is when you look at any value chain, you'll be talking about the upstream sector, the midstream and downstream sectors. What we intend to do in the upstream sector, obviously, is to focus on production. And focusing on production, ensuring that we are able to get proper interfaces between our small-scale holder farmers and our large-scale holder farmers. Also, to be able to put some right infrastructure in place for the development of farm estates. And then when you talk about the midstream and downstream sectors, it will be to ensure that at least in terms of creating the enabling environment for the private sector to be able to invest in value addition and processing, we put in enough framework and enough comfort for them to be able to come into the space. And also in improving private sector partnership, which would be the main driver for all that we are going to do and all that we have been doing. It's critical that the Lagos State government is fully backing them, which is the idea around the 5-year roadmap. So if I now come to one of the second pillar, which is the training, capacity development and empowerment, in terms of the breakup of the number of people that have been trained, we have definitely trained over 800 youth under the Agri Training Institute, and currently about 300 of them are under an internship program across large commercial farms in Lagos and even outside of Lagos. The idea around the Agri Training Institute is to develop youth and women around agricultural value chains where we have the advantages, obviously, and to turn them into large-scale commercial farmers, producers, and value chain actors. Also, we have trained over 90 youth in the cage and pen culture across Ekpe, Badagry, and Ibejuleki axis. We've been able to partner with the MasterCard Foundation and IITA around training about 292 youth, and the plan is for a total of 13,548 of them. Also, we've been able to train, empower, sensitize over 800 rice farmers. We've been able to train and empower 8,156 beneficiaries under the appeals program. We've empowered 462 of them, and more is to happen in this year, 2021 itself. We've also trained and empowered 8,988 beneficiaries under the Lagos State Agricultural Development Authority programs and initiatives, from nutrition and health to a host of other activities. We've been able to empower over 7,007 women, youth, men, farmers across several value chains in the state under the Agricultural Value Chains Empowerment Program, and under the Coconut Program as well, Waste to Wealth. We've been able to train well over 600 women and youth under the Waste to Wealth Arts Program. Moving on to the food market system development, which is where market access is. We have found out that regardless of how much intensity we put behind production, if we are unable to get proper market access, proper market linkages for our farmers, for our producers, then all of our efforts would have been for nothing, which is why market restructuring, market sanitization is actually very critical towards the development of agriculture in Lagos State. We say Lagos is the largest market in sub-Saharan Africa. And like I said earlier, if it is worth over 5 trillion naira of food on an annual basis, then it means a lot has to be done around us, ensuring that the supply and demand deficits that we see are properly matched. As I said earlier as well, when you look across the different value chains, be it red meats, be it fisheries, be it rice, you see that the demand required by Lagosians is far larger than what we are able to supply, which is why we feel that once we are able to get a proper and holistic view towards resolving issues around markets, then half of the problem will be solved. Which is why under this administration, again, we fast-tracked the food and market transformation policy document, which we are working in conjunction with Boston Consulting Group. We've developed it already, and it's just for us to have it ratified by the House of Assembly. But that essentially is to be able to push the agenda around Lagos being the market, other areas of the state in Nigeria being able to tap into what it is that we require in terms of standardization, packaging, quality, and what have you, and for us to have a more wholesome and unified system of having foods in Lagos. Also, we have the Eco-City Farmers Market Initiative. We've held several editions, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware that last year, especially during the COVID lockdown, this was a major intervention by this administration towards ensuring that in keeping with the COVID-19 guidelines, people are still and were still able to access fresh farm produce at locations near them using the schools, since the schools were shut down. But then at least we have the maiden editions in some other nice locations, and we'll continue to push this agenda forward. In terms of the Eco-City Farmers Market, the idea was also to be able to facilitate for these producers a gateway towards them being able to sell their food items directly to consumers, and for consumers to also be able to buy directly from them at farm gate prices. In terms of the volume of transactions that happened during the Eco-City Farmers Market, we realized well over 30 million naira worth of transactions between our farmers and our consumers, and we feel that in terms of the kind of impact it had in terms of those who benefited both directly and indirectly, it was well over 1,000 people.